into room 220.
And finally, exhibit 25, this is classroom 215. What do we see here?
Once again, these are trajectory rods. They're just a different color because we ran out of pink, but we're on to orange trajectory rods that are fired into the window outside of room 215, showing that the bullets were fired from the outside to the inside of that room.
Okay, thank you, sir. Now, did you come to learn that once the shooter reached rooms 213, 214, that he backtracked down the 200 hallway?
I was told that information.
Okay. Sir, did you process the men's bathroom in the 200 hallway that was across from classroom 233?
Yes, I believe it was either 233 or 231. It was in the same general area.
The camera person is asking when they can resume.
After the next picture, Judge. Okay. This is exhibit 26. Sir, what do we see here?
This is a photograph taken outside of that bathroom that we're talking of, outside or across from 231. You can start to see inside the bathroom there's a black backpack, along with there's a, I believe it's a live round or a cartridge as we call it, just found outside of the bathroom. And then you can start to see that there's a large pool of blood inside of that bathroom area. And this is just the entrance to the bathroom itself from the exterior of the hallway.
Did you come to learn this is where Justin Schilling was killed?
Yes, I was.
Did you also recover a fired shell or fired cartridge in this area as well?
Yes, a fired cartridge case was located in this bathroom.
Is that included in the count of 18 you described earlier?
Yes, it is.
Sir, you mentioned earlier the firearm was recovered. This is exhibit 27. Is this a photograph right outside of that bathroom that we just saw?
Yes, it was not taken by me because the firearm had been collected by the on-scene deputies when the suspect was apprehended.
Okay. But that is the firearm that you collected?
That is correct.
And it's a 6-hour 9mm handgun?
Correct.
Now, based upon your crime scene investigation, how many times did the shooter fire that weapon inside Oxford High School on November the 30th?
32 times.
And how many unfired rounds, how many bullets were recovered, either from that magazine or elsewhere?
18.
So a total of 50 rounds of 9mm ammunition was taken to Oxford High School?
That is correct.
Thank you. I have nothing further, Judge.
Should I give them a break right now? Does that make sense to you? You guys need a break? Yes. What's that?
Either or. I mean, we'll need a longer break to fix the monitors as well, Judge. I don't know how long Cross will take this witness. Might make sense.
No problem.
No cross-runner.
Oh, okay. Do they ask them about the monitor? Okay. I'm going to give you a 10-minute break. I always say that, and then, I go back there and the fire is erupts. So we're going to need a moment to fix this monitor so that the witness can see it. It's kind of flashing. It's distracting. So, but someone will be right here. So we're going to give you about a 10-minute break, all right? All right, you can sit down when you're upstairs.
Thank you.
All rise for the jury.
James Crumbly appeared to be wiping away tears during this very tough testimony for everybody that lived through this. I mean, it's an incredible number of rounds and the terror, that's what I wrote down, terror that these people endured. Still with us to talk about it, National Trial Attorneys Mike Jaafar and David Yenna. Michael, what was your takeaways from this all-important testimony?
I thought it was very emotional, very, jarring. Obviously, they had to do it. The prosecution did. I don't know. I mean, it's technically not relevant, as to whether or not this defendant was negligent in whether or not he restrained his son or prevented his son from getting the gun. I don't think it's relevant, but obviously it's very jarring testimony. It's a great move by the prosecution. I also couldn't help but thinking, Matt, 30 minutes ago when you played the allocution of his son, I couldn't help but thinking to myself, to be a fly on the wall in the room when him and his attorney were deciding whether or not, when their turn is up, to bring his son onto the stand to say the same things and say, hey, my dad had nothing to do with it. I deceived everybody, including them. It was all me. I couldn't help but thinking that obviously there's risk in doing that, but there's also a lot of payoff. So, I mean, that's kind of what I thought, Matt.
All right, Michael, to you, just yes or no?
Yeah, he has no chance but taking the stand. His wife is a robot. She did not do well.
All right, you're going to stick with us for next hour. We have to end it there. We're going to hit a break. We'll be back in a few minutes. And welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Matt Johnson, in this week for Judge Ashley Wilcott.
And I'm Michael Ayala, and we're both here today giving you your front row seat to justice. We are in Michigan this afternoon for the second of two historic trials for the parents of school shooter Ethan Crumbley.
Well, he pled guilty in October of 2022 for fatally shooting 4 of his fellow students and injuring 7 others.
Prosecutors say his parents should also be held responsible after they ignored warning signs of his mental distress and even provided Ethan with the gun.
Well, Jennifer Crumbley, Ethan's mom, was found guilty last month of involuntary manslaughter, and now her husband is on trial.
All right, what we want to do now is get you back into court for the state's next witness, Detective Joe Bryan. He interviewed James and Jennifer Crumbley following the fatal shooting. So let's go back in.
I was heading that way, then I got diverted.
And tell me what happened.
Lieutenant Wills called me and asked if I would go to the Oxford substation to attempt some interviews.
Okay. And we say attempt some interviews. Interviews of who?
The shooter, the responsible.
Okay, so the shooter was arrested at the Oxford High School on November the 30th and taken to where?
The Oxford substation.
Okay, so we say substation, so the sheriff's office being a rather large organization, there's different police stations of the sheriff's office within Oakland County?
Correct. Every township that contracts with us, we have a substation, a main police station at each contracted area, each township.
Okay, and when we say Oxford substation, that's what we're referring to?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you were made aware that the shooter was transported to that location?
Correct.
And you were sent there to do what?
Attempt to interview.
Okay. And did you speak with the shooter?
I did.
Okay. Did you learn his parents' identities?
I did.
Okay. And what did you do with that information?
I called his dad and asked him to respond to the substation to talk to them.
Is his dad in court today?
Yes.
Can you point to him, describe something he's wearing today?
And he's sitting at the front table and he has the headphones with the little white off on.
Your record reflect identification?
The record will reflect in court identification of the defendant.
Okay, so we had testimony from Edward Bobrowski regarding location data earlier today and yesterday that showed that James Crumbley arrived at the substation about 1:58 p.m. On November the 30th. Is that consistent with your memory?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now tell us, please, what happened after. What did James Crumbley arrive? Did Jennifer Crumbley arrive as well?
Yes, they both arrived together.
Okay. And tell us what happened after they arrived.
My partner and I, Rob Miller, took them into an interview room to let them know what was going on.
Okay. And in the Oxford substation, when you took them to an interview room, is this room equipped with audio and visual recording?
Yes, it was.
Okay. And was that equipment operational on November the 30th?
It was.
Okay. And was that conversation between yourself, the defendant, and his wife, is that captured on audio and visual recording?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You've seen that recording before?
I have.
And that fairly depicts that conversation?
It does.
So this is Exhibit 301. I believe we do not have an objection to this, but is that correct?
Correct, no objection, Your Honor.
We're the ones that did it, yes.
May I pose to the jury, Judge?
Sure.
So as we wait for the...
We know if we need the sound adjusted.
Thank you, Judge. Before I press play, the top right corner of the screen here reflects 14:58. The time is actually 13:58. Would that be correct?
That's correct.
And is that because of daylight savings?
I'm assuming.
Okay. So the actual time this begins is 1:58 p.m. on November the 30th.
That's correct. All right.
So before you start, just identify everybody who you see here.
I got my back, the bald head, and a big blue shirt. To my left is my partner, now retired Sergeant Rob Miller. One standing is James Crumbley, and one is Jennifer Crumbley, his wife.
Okay.
Obviously, we don't know all that happened yet. Everything's still ongoing. Our understanding he wasn't involved in a school shooting. He was the one who did everything. He said he acted alone. That's all basically the only thing he's acted so far because there's word about other students, other people involved in this. Last name is also Crumbly, and James, what's your date of birth?
Pause it for a second, just for where it was redacted because personal information was being discussed?
That's correct.
Okay, personal identifying information.
Yes, sir.
He was writing DS service history. He was doodling on a test or a practice test.
Do you think you should probably have a lawyer?
That's up to you.
I think we can probably have a lawyer.
I think we can speak
I know.
to the cops and we'll hear
Here's our perspective right now. This thing is still very, very fresh.
Right.
Our people are still on their way to the hospital and it's fresh. We need to know what his state of mind is. Is there explosive devices anywhere? Is there other guns anywhere? Do you hide guns, ammunition, weed devices? Are there any other victims? We need to know these things quite rapidly.
I was in town. So all you guys go to, I don't care about it. When I see I start concerned. I headed to the high school, obviously couldn't get to the high school, turned into the minor parking lot, and I saw these kids standing outside. I'm trying to call my son, make sure he's okay, and
He texted me that he loves me.
You have to do that.
and somebody said that there was an active shooter.
35 minutes
I
before he called me,
immediately
that was
freaked out
I went
because
down
of
to the school.
the situation.
He was drawing that on the paper and the cops were called.
All right, let's bring in our guests. Still joining us for this hour, national trial attorneys from Detroit, Michigan, Michael Jaafar and David Yenner. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us here on the program.
And I think that, you know, the jury has just seen a lot of video in this case so far and a lot of text messages, a lot of digital footprint. They saw the parents at the school not taking the son home, and now they see them in this, you know, being questioned by police. Really important stuff to their initial answers, don't you think, Michael?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still shocked that they were even talking to police. They showed up like they were showing up for an appointment with a CPA. You know, they just showed up and sat there and asked for a water and just spoke to the police. I mean, 101, don't do that. But they did that. But this is a landmark case, and it's a landmark decision by the prosecution to even bring this case. I was shocked that the first trial did not land in a hung jury. And we as spectators don't see the jurors, but obviously in the courtroom you see the jurors. If I was the defense attorney, I would hope that one of the jurors there, you know, has a long beard and just looks like somebody who owns a bunch of guns, because that would be the person I would bank on to hang this jury, right? But yeah, I mean, the whole thing is like watching a train wreck, seeing them sit down, talk to the police, and then answer questions. I'm just baffled by the whole thing. But this is a seismic shift, and now we all know the next time there's a school shooting, we know that the parents are going to get charged. We now know that unless the kid steals the gun, I don't see how any parent can avoid getting prosecuted. These prosecutors show up for mastermind meetings around the country and they share notes, and you know they have a playbook, and they've just went to the next level in that playbook by what we're seeing happening to the Crumbleys.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point, because what that does is exactly what I think people want this prosecution to do, David. They want parents to realize that next time, if there's a school shooting, you could possibly be found guilty. So you better be diligent with your child. That's really, at the end of the day, what prosecuting these cases are all about, letting people know, putting them on notice.
I absolutely agree. I think there's many things, layers here. It's systematic changes. The school had red flags. They didn't do much about it. The parents, it's not just about, you know, giving them access to the gun and actually giving them the gun, but it's the mental health side of things too. So I think that's exactly what they're trying to achieve.
Yeah, and that's what this is all about, right? Missing the warning signs, not answering to the calls for help, not using the gun lock, buying him a gun in the first place. Why? I mean, it's just a lot. We're going to fit in a short break right now. Don't go anywhere. More testimony out of Pontiac, Michigan when we come back. And welcome back. Let's go back now to Pontiac, Michigan for day 2 in the school shooter dad trial.
The entire Crumbly family, parents James and Jennifer and their son Ethan, were all charged in connection to the 2021 Oxford High School shooting that left 4 students dead and 7 others injured.
Ethan already pleaded guilty to the shooting and in his sentencing told the court that his parents didn't know what he was about to do.
We are all here because of me today, of what I did. My actions were because of what I chose to do. I could not stop myself, but I am the one who led to why we are here today. I do not diminish any ability to anyone who could have stopped me, of anyone of a school or parents. They did not know, and I did not tell them what I planned to do, so they are not at fault of what I've done.
Ethan trying to help his parents out there, but prosecutors, they say otherwise, saying the parents missed glaring warning signs in the weeks and days before the shooting.
All right, let's get you back to court now for more of James and Jennifer Crumbly's initial police interview.
At 12:21, you okay? He said, yeah, just got back from lunch. I said, you know, you can talk to us, but you won't judge. He said, I know, thank you, I'm sorry for that, I love you. I said, I love you too. And then, you okay? I hear that. And then, he told me about what's going on, and I freaked out when I drove here from work. And that's where we're at. That was at 12:21, and he's just getting back from lunch.
Well, you had had a meeting with the counselor this morning with that rule?
Yeah.
I did, what program is this? Was it the first hour, second one, what time was it?
I got to school at 10:30, not whatever.
Earlier, first or second hour, I don't know. And what did he say? I mean, he just said he was sorry. He just said, you know, did he have an issue for being hit? No. No. Well, I did not that we know of. His best friend, his parents just sent him somewhere to Wisconsin for an OCD rehabilitation. That was his only friend that he had. They hung out all the time, hung out at school. Our dog, our Great Pyrenees, she passed away a couple months ago. My mom died back in April. So that's... So you know what the drug is going on? They didn't... It was hidden in our car, in the case, and the bullets were hidden in a completely different spot, underneath some jeans. I raced home, and the guy that's under his off the cops. After I saw the cops, after I thought I was an active shooter, after what went on this morning, I immediately raced home and found the gun in his hand. That's why I called you guys. I called you guys right away and let you know. How far away is your guys' house from the high school?
They right
We live on the street. I don't know that.
they keep off. They're going to come to school.
lawyer. He is totally entitled to one. That's going to be all to you guys. We would like.
I'm not doing Andy right now.
Okay. Andy, take with me. Can Andy handle?
Andy can get me something.
We would like a lawyer present before we do any question from here on out. Okay. And no disrespect to you guys. It's just I don't want to hit on this one. I only see this stuff on TV at school.
All I know is I talked to the counselor about that. He talked to me, and we went down there, and that's all it was about. And he didn't seem worried about it, and he said he was more welcome to stay at school or he could go home, and I really wish we would take him to go home.
Healthier for the time being, Billy. He's been arrested. He's maybe going to either jail or children's village for a short time. So we'll talk to him. So, for any medical conditions, any mental conditions we need to be aware of.
He's supposed to get anxiety or something or something.
If you have any meds or anything like that you have at home that you might need to bring through? No meds, no. Is there no treatment for mental health, anything like that? Okay. Give me 1 second, I'm going to get the time tomorrow. There's a lot of stuff we want to ask them as far as like meeting and all that kind of stuff. I want to let one of you guys go with us. All right. Yeah, no problem. All right, so give me 1 minute to go to the form. I'll be right back. Oh yeah, push yourself the same. Any trouble with him, with law or anything?
Nothing.
Everything is suspended?
Nothing.
He told you that he had been in town, correct?
Yes.
That he saw the police cars?
Yes.
Many police cars. That he tried to get to the high school?
Correct.
That he couldn't get there?
Correct.
That he went to the Meyer and saw all the students?
Yes.
And that he was trying to get a hold of his son?
Yes.
And he specifically said he was trying to get a hold of his son to see if his son was okay.
Correct.
He then at some point told his wife about what happened at the school, the shooting that happened at the school.
Yes.
At about 5 minutes and 18 seconds of the interview, James was very clear that they didn't have issues with their son.
Yes.
That he didn't believe that they had been having issues with their son. Is that fair to say?
That's what he said, yes, ma'am.
He talked about the fact that his friend had been sent away.
Yes.
And let me clarify. James talked about the fact that his son's friend had been sent away.
Yes, I know what you're saying.
Okay. And that their dog died.
Yes.
James's mother passed away that April.
Yes.
At 6 minutes and 24 seconds, you were looking at the math homework on Jennifer Crumbly's phone, and I believe it was you that said, did anyone ask him about this?
I believe specifically the bullet holes.
Correct.
That you're referring to.
Yes, I am. And I was going to say that. And I was going to say specifically the bullet holes, or what appear to be bullet holes, on the figure that's drawn on the math homework.
Yes, ma'am.
And Jennifer responded no.
Right.
And then she kind of talked about the counselor, and there was a brief discussion about the counselor, and you wouldn't know what happened with the counselor, correct?
I do not.
Okay. At 6 minutes and 35 seconds, there was a statement that their son was a perfect kid.
Yes.
In their eyes, he was a perfect kid.
That's what they said.
At 6 minutes and 45 seconds, James told you that he had a 6-hour handgun.
Yes.
That was, at 6 minutes and 50 seconds, he said that it was hidden in an armoire in a case.
Correct.
At 6 minutes and 58 seconds, and these are approximate timestamps, so I'm not holding you to them, Detective.
I really appreciate it.
6 minutes and 58 seconds that the bullets were hidden in a different spot under jeans, he says.
Yes.
You know, Matt, even in that interview, when they're talking to police, they're trying to be as honest as they can. I don't think they're trying to lie or anything. The two things they were most concerned about were him hurting himself, right, when they heard about the gun or thought about the gun. But also, they didn't think that their kid had any serious problems. The idea that he was a perfect kid, and most kids, you know, you have issues, but he would go to school, his grades were up and down, didn't get in any trouble. I mean, I kind of feel for the difficulty of kind of discerning that your kid was capable of something this wild.
Well, I also think that that's the reason why we're here in the first place with this first in the nation type of case, because they're delusional. They think that they have the perfect kid, and their kid was struggling clearly. I mean, no one's going to characterize their child as being the next mass shooter, but
he needed help.
He needed help.
And he was reaching out for it and wasn't getting it. Let's bring back in our guests still with us, National Trial Attorneys Michael Jaafar and David Yenna. Michael, I'll go to you. Just from looking at the interview, there really, I mean, it plays out, Jennifer, what we saw on the stand and who she is. She was much more methodical and unemotional. She's thinking about getting a lawyer. He's like, no, we can talk here. And he was even getting emotional. What effect, if any, will that have on this jury?
I think it'll have a big effect, especially if he ends up taking the stand, right? Because here's the thing, Michael. This case, whether or not it should have been brought, people just have to understand that negligence is very easy to prove when somebody dies, especially when multiple kids die, right? So the burden of proof is not very high. So when you're the attorney and you're talking to your client, you have to, everything is a Hail Mary at this point, especially when you know that the mother who had better facts than you got convicted, right? By the same population of people. Right? So everything is important. So taking the stand and showing emotion is important because she is very robotic, right? That does not play well, right? So he has to take the stand, in my opinion, because negligence is a very easy burden of proof for the prosecution to overcome when somebody dies. Technically, it should be the same burden of proof as if somebody just broke their ankle. But it's not. There's something, the gravity is different. So he has to take the stand. He's already crying in the courtroom. Hey, you're crying in the courtroom, just move your chair from here to there and cry over there, right? This is going to be important because the only shot he has is at a hung jury. He's not going to get 12 people to acquit him. He's got to get one person in there who believes deeply that it's okay to buy a gun. It's not your fault that somebody else took the gun and shot somebody, and you know, the emotion's going to sway that person.
And welcome back. Thanks for being with Michael and myself. We are following the trial against James Crumbley in Michigan this afternoon. He's the last of 3 to be charged in the Oxford High School shooting that was carried out by his son Ethan in 2021. Ethan, as you know, already pleaded guilty and is sentenced to life in prison.
Now, his mother, Jennifer, James's wife, was convicted last month on 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter. Will the jury find James just as guilty on the same charges? All right, we're going to take you back into court now. The jury is hearing from the school's assistant principal.
Was there any moment where you noticed something unusual?
Yeah, usually I would go all the way to the senior window, but I paused at the diamond there just because there were a lot of kids rushing, laughing and rushing, and it was bizarre to me. I didn't know what was happening at that time.
Okay, you just testified some kids rush, but your answer just now suggests that the rushing seemed something bizarre.
Very different.
Okay, can you describe to the jury what you mean by that?
Okay, so rushing to lunch is like a Olympic power walk situation, and running out of the building is different. So it appeared as though, I don't want to say they're running out of the building because I was not anywhere near a door to know where they were going, but there was more running and laughing going on.
And what did you think at that moment?
That was very odd.
Okay, yeah. What did you do next?
I asked a couple of students what was happening. They didn't know. And then a student came by running and saying, "Get the hell out of here." And then
to you?
To anybody, just announced it in that area.
Did that seem unusual?
Extremely.
Okay. At some point, did you get information that there was an active shooter?
Not at that point, no.
Okay. So the student that you mentioned comes towards you running and yells, get the hell out of here. And what do you do next?
I asked a couple of kids what was going on. They didn't know, again.
So what did you do?
Well, almost immediately after that, I asked the kids. The PA system went off and said to take Alice protocol.
So that was that the first time you were alerted that there was an active shooter?
But that was the first time I knew something was happening.
Okay.
Still didn't know it was an active shooter.
Did you know? Okay, fair. Did you know if it was a drill or a real Alice?
I didn't know. I just knew that we were going into Alice protocol.
Okay. Before I ask you some more questions, I just want to stop here because I forgot to ask you so we can get a good picture. The school holds about how many students on one day?
About 1,800.
Okay. And this might not be a fair question, and just tell me if it's not. What kind of familiarity do you have with the general student body?
I try to know everybody's name, so I'm pretty familiar with the students.
Okay. When you heard the announcement, were you aware of who made the announcement?
It sounded like Steve Wolf.
And who was that?
That was our principal at the time.
Okay. What did you do?
I started to check the hallway to make sure it was getting cleared. The hallways cleared extremely fast. So I walked toward the 400 hallway. I got on the walkie and said there were students running. I'm not sure what's happening. But the hallways cleared, just completely cleared out. So then I turned down the
Did you hear anything else at that point?
No.
Okay. So you're in the 400 hallway, did you say?
Correct.
Okay.
Starting at the top of the 400, yeah.
And the announcement was to implement Alice protocol. Did you say that?
Yes.
Okay. And is that what you did?
I made sure the kids did.
Okay.
I did not.
What did you do?
I went down the 400 hallway to make sure that the hallway I was closest to, students were taking cover. They did very quickly. One student came up very late to the situation, and I made sure that he got into a classroom. He asked if it was a drill. I said, it doesn't matter if it's a drill. You got to take cover.
At this point in the hall, when you were walking down these halls, were the classroom doors open or closed?
Closed.
Okay. So you got that student in the classroom.
That teacher was locking the door.
Okay.
So that teacher was out locking the door, and I put him in that classroom with that teacher.
Okay. And then did you go into lockdown?
I did not.
Okay. Tell the jury what you did.
After that door was secured, I could smell what I called cap gun at the time, but I now know it was gunpowder. And
Before that, to stop you, before that, did you hear anything?
I don't think I had yet. I can't remember the order, but then shortly after that, I heard gunshots.
Okay, at this point, what kind of familiarity did you have with firearms? And the reason I'm asking is, did you know when you heard that sound what it was?
I knew what it was, but I don't have a lot of experience with firearms.
Okay, so you're hearing the sound, you smell what you think is
Captain.
right.
So weird, but yeah.
And so then you go into lockdown.
I did not.
Tell the jury what you did.
I went towards the gunfire to see what was happening because I wanted to make sure that our kids were safe.
Okay, can you tell us and relate where you were to the map in terms of which hallway, which classroom, so that we can direct the jury to the right?
So I was down around room 408 and 409, and then moving towards 416.
Okay.
And then when I got to 416, at the end of that hallway, I turned left towards where the gunfire had happened.
So you ran towards the sound?
I did.
Okay. What did you see, Christy?
I saw a student on the ground, so I approached that direction. I was concerned about the student on the ground. I couldn't tell who the student was, but I saw a student laying on the ground.
Did you see anything else in the hallways at this point?
At that moment, I don't believe I did quite yet. Shortly after I did, like very.
Any other people?
Shortly after recognizing that there was a student on the ground, there was a student coming my direction.
Okay, but any other staff, administration, teachers, students? Okay.
The assistant principal right there. And you know what? You and I were talking about this. It's really compelling when you have like the investigators butted up with the victims and all of this that are reliving the trauma for that jury.
Yeah, and it's a little bit of a different approach than the first group of prosecutors who sort of top-loaded all the emotional stuff. Here they're kind of weaving it in and out, which I think is more effective.
All right, well, more of her testimony out of Pontiac, Michigan. When we come back, we're going to fit in a short break. You're watching Court TV.
All right, back now to Michigan, where James Crumbley, the father of a school shooter, is on trial facing charges of involuntary manslaughter.
And right now, we're bringing you the testimony from the school's assistant principal. Let's get you back in.
Now, the judges made very specific rulings that you cannot talk about any sort of highly suffering. So I want to make sure that we describe what happened, but in a way that comports with her order. Did you approach that student?
The student on the ground?
Yes. All right. And describe how the student was lying down. Face down, face up.
He was face down and looking away, down. Well, face down. His head was more turned towards the opposite of where I was. So
away from me.
Away from
Okay.
me. And there was a garbage can in the way, so I moved the garbage can out of the way so I could get to him better.
And Christy, when you approached the student, did you have could you see any signs of injury? Did you know what happened to the student?
I didn't know anything at that point, no.
Okay. What did you do next?
I looked up the hallway and I could see another student look like he was bringing his arm down. My assumption was that was probably the shooter.
And so what did you do?
I let the officer know on the walkie that I had eyes on the shooter.
Okay. And were you instructed to do anything at that point?
I don't remember.
Would it have mattered?
Probably not.
Okay.
I had a student on my feet.
Okay. Tell the jury what you did.
The shooter was coming closer to me. As he got very close, I realized it was Ethan, and it didn't seem right to me because Ethan always seemed like a sweet kid. I just couldn't picture that being him, so I talked to him. As he walked by, I asked him if he was okay, what was going on. I took a few steps down the hallway with him.
Did you see that he was holding anything?
Yeah, he had a gun in his hand.
Okay.
And
what did the shooter do? Did he look at you? Did he turn away? Did he speak to you?
he looked away from me, which that made me, I knew for sure that at that point he was the shooter because he would have talked to me if he were in typically he would have said something to me. He would have talked to me.
Okay. And I do have to ask, why didn't you take cover?
There was a student that needed my help.
Okay. So at some point, were you alone in that space? Did the shooter pass you by? Did he stop?
He kept walking. I walked with him for just a couple of steps and I think we measured probably 10 feet. And then I turned my back on him. I know this is ridiculous that I did, but I turned my back on him because I had a student that I needed to check on.
Okay, I'm sorry, I have to ask you to keep your voice up.
Sorry. So I turned my back on him. I wasn't sure where he went. He was past me. And then I went back to the student that was on the ground.
Okay. At that point, could you identify who the student was?
At that point, I rolled him over and I realized
that it was taped. Here. Did you notice if he was injured?
At that point, I knew that he had a bullet wound.
Did he have what? I'm sorry.
He had a bullet wound entering the back of his head and exiting in the front.
Was he still alive?
I hoped he was. He was very gray, but I started to resuscitate immediately.
Okay.
He had a pulse.
What's that?
He had a pulse.
Okay. You knew him?
Yeah. I had all of his brothers, and his mom was my PTO president. I've known the family really well.
Okay. What happened next?
I just began to give him rescue breaths.
How long did that go on?
Your Honor, may we approach?
Next question, please. Next question.
How long was it? I asked what happened next, Your Honor. I'm doing my best.
Okay, what happened?
Without saying what that experience was like for you, was there a moment when you stopped, and what happened to make you stop?
I continued until they took him from me.
All right, still with us, attorneys Michael Jaafar and David Yenna. Michael, I want to go back to you and something you said previously. It sounded like you think the facts for James are worse than they were for Jennifer, and I want to sort of push back on that because one of the things that the other jury focused on was that she was the last person with the gun. And you definitely don't have that with with the father. And also, she was the last one with him who made that real decision not to take him home. So those two things, I think, work against her. But you still think the facts are worse for him?
I do. I think they're worse for him because he bought the gun, right? Because here's the thing, so my keys are on the counter. I have a bunch of young kids at the house. If one of them grabs the keys when I'm asleep and they drive the car out of the driveway and they kill somebody, somebody's going to ask whether or not I was negligent in where I left the keys, right? So to your point, somebody could say, well, she was the last person with him. But at the same time, he bought the gun. So I feel like when you buy a gun and when you have it in your house, I feel like the onus then comes on you because there's people who buy guns and people who don't buy guns. So the facts were better for her because she was able to say, I didn't buy the gun, right? He bought the gun and he and I were not exactly seeing eye to eye. And what was I going to do? Take the gun and throw it away? I didn't buy it, right? So I kind of just throwing my hands up and I don't know what to say. So for me, I feel like her facts were better than his. But obviously, she also was a terrible witness. She was a terrible person, her demeanor in the courtroom. So I'm still shocked that she did not get a hung jury. But I think her facts were better. And her attorney had more fodder. They had more tools. They could come back and say, we had nothing to do with any of this.
Yeah, there's really nothing you can cross-examine them on. You just kind of move on
it's
and let it go.
It's just the bad facts of the crime,
yes.
But, they're negligent in connection is what the charges are, right?
Exactly. So you just kind of walk away from that. Quickly, Michael, we talked a little earlier, Matt and I, about the fact that the prosecution's approach a little different. But first time, it seemed like they top-loaded a lot of this emotional information. Now, they're sprinkling it in. Good choice?
I think it's a really good choice. I think you can't do wrong, go wrong because these mass shootings at a school, they don't just happen to a school, they happen to a community, right? And so the jurors have been impacted. Everybody's been impacted. And so it's a slow drip, drip, drip. It's like a Chinese water torture if you're the defense. I'm upset for them. So I know what they're dealing with. It's tough.
Michael Jaafar, David Yenna, thank you so much.